So, welcome to another Terrific Tips for Business. Why Terrific Tips? Because I'm Terry, and you can't spell terrific without Terry.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to a new friend of mine share her story. I think it's going to resonate with some of you, and I think you're going to find a lot of value in the things that she has to share with us today. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to my friend Natasha Ford. Natasha is passionate about her vision as a business owner in teaching people how to cook meals that are full of healthy ingredients and infused with some notes of tropical Caribbean flavors. Who doesn't like to spice things up a little bit? She is an expert in areas like food therapy, particularly in the area of holistic culinary nutrition. And she loves teaching and working with adults with disabilities and teaching other women in the food industry the steps to succeed as an entrepreneur. So now you know why she's on the show, right? Because she's got a lot of experience here. Natasha's first encounter with this passion came about while she was a child growing up in the beautiful tropics of Barbados. And I cannot wait for her to share her story on this because it was a revolutionary turning point for her to make the decision to get into this industry. Natasha even had the opportunity to compete in several competitions, including Cutthroat Kitchen. Some of you might be like, what? I remember that show. And The Taste. So this is really cool. We have a celebrity in our mix, guys. Like, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear the story about all of this. She also used her platform when as she's grown in her business to be an advocate for women who have endured domestic violence and who live in underserved populations. So I love that she's here to help really share that heart. She currently resides in North Carolina, where she works with the community college to build an innovative program that prepares adults with disabilities for adequate roles in the food industry. This movement is a driver for her on her quest to build a business focused on sharing her wealth of knowledge in food therapy and entrepreneurship to women in the disadvantaged situations. I believe that by sharing all of the knowledge and wisdom required along the way, others will gain the ability to help themselves, their families, and thereby changing the communities that they live in at large. One of Natasha's favorite mottos is teach a man how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Miss Natasha to the show. Thanks for taking the time to be here today.
I'm trying to tell you, I should make you my ad libs person.
I do pretty good, huh?
Wow, thank you. It's really good sometimes to kind of hear about yourself from through the ears, through the voice of someone else, and just allow yourself to kind of absorb it in. Because a lot of times you as a person can, especially women, we can kind of go through life being caretakers. We give so much of ourselves and we never take a step back to really hear about ourselves. So thank you, because I attentively listen to you and go, wow, I really did do all those things, didn't I? So
That's
thank
so
you.
awesome. Yeah, well, thank
So,
you.
so where do I start? I guess I can start from why do I love food so much? I'm going to make this uberly simple. From the time I was a child, I always had a deep, deep love for food, and I knew it when I was young. Um, I loved being in the kitchen with my grandmother. I loved getting, kitchen utensils as toys. I enjoyed, when everyone was making their mud pies for their dolls, I wanted my mud pies to have color to it. So I got into a lot of trouble cutting up plants. I've had the blisters from cutting up plants, from the saps that itch, to the spankings from my grandmothers for cutting up in their plants. But I love the fact that whether it was the green leaves or the different tropical plants that had reds in it and browns, I wanted my mud to have color. I used to take the leaves and wrap them as well. Like, my dolls had to have a variety when I fed them. And I even went as far as cutting their mouths open to feed them, So I've had my dad will tell you they've had days of washing up my doll's head full of food and mud, mud food, so my mud was not a typical mixing of the water, mixing mud. My mud had to have flavor, and style, and when my grandmother would cook and then put some of the food in my little toy pots for me, it felt like I just hit the jackpot. So from a very young age, I had a very strong affinity to the kitchen. I loved, loved, loved just being in the kitchen with my grandmother, particularly, and just watching her cook, helping her shell peas, grew up watching my family, clean, fresh fish that just came out the ocean in Barbados, kill chickens,
Hmm.
as a child. And I wasn't it was just, to me, it was just very wondrous. I wasn't one of those people who was turned off from it. I was actually very intrigued by it. Watching my other grandmother bake cakes and just really like touch and feel and sense what the cake needed. I feel like it was, to me, it was a symphony. So that's what kind of got me into, I can say that is the reason why I've gotten into food, and just watching it, how it affected family. I love dinner time growing up as a child. I tell people I've learned everything about life as a child from sitting at the dinner table. I've learned different people's point of views, religion, politics, everything, family matters. We use food in Barbados, and I'm sure the world knows that you use food for everything. Well, there's a baby coming into the world, a wedding, a birthday party, when people pass away, everybody congregates around food and they have conversation,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. It's a celebration of life, right? And
exactly.
in
And it's
all forms. Celebration of new life, celebration of a new life together, celebration of somebody's life well lived. It's all, and it does all relate around food. That's interesting. I never really.
right. People make hard, politicians talk about it all the time, how you sit around the kitchen table or the dinner table and you have those hard family discussions about finances and what are you going to do next? Or, people get engaged. If you think about it, a lot of times people get engaged around dinners, or even if they get engaged outside of a dinner, it ends up being a dinner and a party. Like, we just love food. It's just the humanity in us. You can sit around each other and speak different languages and still enjoy food and music. It's just the global, to me, it's one of the global things of the world, right?
A global
Uh,
form of communication. We all
correct,
understand it. Yeah,
correct,
that
correct.
makes good sense.
But
And
and
I love how inspired your grandmothers were to like recognize that that was something you were really like taking interest in and kind of fed that along, like invited you to be part of their cooking experiences so that they could continue to like sow in that seed of interest and curiosity for you.
it is. And I love the fact that food expresses everyone's culture. You might not understand a person, you might not necessarily agree with them, you might not look like them, but if you sit and you eat with them, like even in Indian culture, how you learn to eat with your hands, like I love food tours that talks about world and global travel, and you see authentic food. I have a thing for authenticity of cultural food.
Mm.
And so obviously, life didn't kind of pan out that way. If I had just from a child sprung right into food, God knows where, my life would have taken me. But that was not what happened. I obviously had my life, grew up as a teenager. I moved to the US. And when I moved here, one of my parents, that was not her vision for me. They did not see a real career in the food industry. um, and so I went into, first I tried psychology, sociology, human services, because I like helping people. And because of different traumas I went through in life, I became a longtime advocate for immigration and domestic violence. I was one of the great recipients of the VAWA law. I was one of the first few in US to receive my residency and citizenship through VAWA. So I do thank, Senator Joe Biden and the people who passed that law. And then it just became a passion of mine to advocate for that. purpose. And interestingly enough, when I was working for the not-for-profit Sanctuary for Families, volunteering, I should say, and mentoring people, I used to still have an affinity to bring food to meetings. And the same thing happened when I worked in corporate America in HR. Then I jumped into HR and the business world and the banking world. I will constantly bring food for people. I will always be cooking a pie, doing something, bringing to work a salad. I just love cooking and just being around people with food. And some of you guys might say, well, why didn't you just go into the restaurant industry? I don't know why I didn't choose to go in the restaurant industry. Like I said, I guess I was more hung up on this being a people pleaser, wanted to please my family, wanted to, get into that whole process. And
Yeah.
so I kind of continued down that corporate path. And then our great recession of 2008, 2007 hit when the big financial bubble burst. And I was caught in the middle of that financial bubble.
Oh no.
Finishing up my master's degree. And I said it was time to jump ship in 2010. So I started my quest to go to culinary school. So I was actually finishing up graduate school. I jumped right into culinary school. But I didn't go to a traditional culinary school. I went to a school that was focused on using food as medicine and really understanding people will call the Eastern philosophies of using food, not just to nourish the body, but also to help heal the body.
Do you follow Dr. Mark Hyman at all? Because he talks a
Yes,
lot
I do.
about food as medicine as well.
Right. So
Yeah.
Dr. Mark Hyman, Deepak Chopra, quite a few people kind of rallied around. I'm so sorry. I do apologize. I didn't realize my phone was on. Let me turn it off. Deepak Chopra, quite a number of these guys actually learned with Dr. Anne-Marie Colbin. She was, I call it, a legacy above her time. Dr. Colbin, since the 80s, had started the Natural Gourmet Institute. She's no longer here. I was actually a part of her apprenticeship group before she passed. But she's worked with a lot. I think Dr. Hyman actually was a part of her world. She would have been a little older than them. And a lot of them actually went to her school, traveled from all around the world and went to her school. Dr. Diadamo, Eat Right for Your Blood Type. All of those different people were a part of her world, and she was a part of theirs.
Wow. That's really cool.
She was actually very well good friends with Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz was actually one of her doctors that actually studied with her. And then when he finally had his television show, she used to tease him and say to him, now that you're famous, you can't, we can't be good friends anymore, But and if you look up Dr. Anne-Marie Colbin, you'll see a lot of her work and her legacy. I mean, she used to write for a lot of great articles back in the 1980s when I was a baby about using food as medicine. She's one of the pioneers of this movement. And I had the great opportunity not only to go to the school and learn culinary, but then also be a part of her food therapy program right up until she, had some heart issues from birth, and eventually she passed away. So I was a part of her last group.
Oh, wow.
Extra special.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so cool. So you not only get to carry on your grandmother's legacies of the love and the joy that they had for preparing meals for the family, but you also get to carry on the knowledge and the legacy of this amazing woman who saw the value in food and how food can really heal us. And I think that's beautiful. It's such a wonderful story. What does that feel like for you?
I can tell you now at 41, when everything to me is coming full circle, I feel like now I'm saying, okay, now I understand why I did that. Well, now I understand why I did this. I think in the moment of it, I didn't quite understand. There's a lot of things I've done in the moment that I didn't quite understand. And then, believe it or not, a marriage and a relationship of 14 years. When I said, I just woke up one day and looked at life, looked at myself and said, it's time. Same thing with 10 years ago when I got into transcendental meditation. Because around that same time, I got into TM. I was introduced to TM when I took that program by one of the chefs who was also a macro He was an Ayurvedic master and yogi, and he actually introduced me to transcendental meditation, which I'll talk a little bit about because I know you wanted me to mention that.
Yeah.
And was very good at practicing it, consistently for a long period of time, and then kind of fell off for different reasons. And then later on, now just really getting back into it even more. But
Here's
I
a
will.
question for you. Is preparing food in the kitchen and like teaching other people how to cook part of your meditation?
Yeah, it is. I would say that's one of the reasons why I probably would, I've tried to work in the restaurant industry as being a part of the madness, and I can't. I totally I would love to open up a restaurant, but someone else would have to be the chef, and them and I would have, and I want to do it, and for them and I to have a shared vision and let them, someone who just wants to immerse themselves in in the kitchen and boss people around and yell and scream and just be immersed in the masterpiece of it all. And I kind of jump in and out with them and go, okay, I'm here today for 4 or 5 hours to be a part of this, and then go, okay, I want to jump out of it now and let me go out here and build the business.
I
Because
guess the question though really comes down to if you have the right culture within the restaurant, it doesn't need to be like mass chaos and craziness. I know that's what we've come to traditionally understand is the restaurant industry, but I think with the right leadership in the
I'll,
right
I'll tell you the, the
right
funniest.
values, it might not need to be that way.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's true. But I'll tell you the funniest thing. If I become the chef of the, and I guess it's because I love so much evolvement and growth.
Yeah.
My restaurant, if I was the one who was cooking in there, I would, you know, and I love cooking. I love, love, love cooking. Do not get me wrong. My first business, I had a catering company in New York, a boutique catering that focused on corporate catering. And I made a lot of money and did really well. I fell in love with the idea of not even cooking anymore,
Mm-hmm.
besides for my family and friends. I just have this love and affinity for family and friends and food just being very intimate. And I feel like even if you became a unique breed of a restaurant, because there's a lot of them. I'm sure you guys watched a docu-series on Netflix called Chef's Table, and people just evolve their things. There's still a commitment to being there and running a business because you have people working for you, right?
Yeah.
And you want to make sure people get paid. And I'm one of those people who probably open up a restaurant once a month, for people to come and laugh and make memories and then go about their business. Like if you ask me to do that every single week, I will become extremely aggravated after about 90 days.
Okay.
And doing meditation, learning to go within and understanding that spiritual journey over all of these years has taught me the truth about myself. And I guess that's where the entrepreneurship
So
helped me
important.
come. I love teaching. I love teaching. Yes, food has to be involved, but I can actually say my underlying passion, I love teaching. I love being on TV teaching. I love to share and to teach and to help. And that gives me the joy of it. And if a bunch of us could jump in the kitchen and cook together and inspire and teach each other, I'm all over it and I can do it forever and a day.
So you want
But
to make like Heaven's Kitchen instead of Hell's Kitchen.
correct. So that's why I said I would love to collaborate and I do want to have it in my future. Like, I mean, I'm actually looking at my business and redefining, restructuring it and saying, okay, I want to just focus right now on teaching people how to fall back in love with food and cook.
What's been
Especially,
your biggest challenge with that?
um, I would say, the one thing that I've really had to take a step back and learn is to niche my goals very carefully and focus on one thing at a time. Um,
Ah, nice.
you
That's a
know,
good one.
Right. Because sometimes you can, and I'm not by nature a big creative per se. I'm a very logical thinker. But the more that I tap into my inner self, the more creative I get. And sometimes I'm like, well, this sounds great and that sounds great. I love helping this population, like the population with disabilities. And just realizing, you know what, Natasha, start here. What is your what is the thing that just drives you? What will just make your day, like eating ice cream every day? And I'm like, if somebody gives me a television show right now where I can teach couples how to just, we can talk and cook and talk about relationships and life and all that stuff. A conversation with food, like what I do on Wednesday nights on my Facebook Live show. If I did that every day and then we cooked together and talked about all kinds of subjects, it would be a wrap. So kind of think about like almost like Rachel Ray, like food and conversation.
Okay.
That would be the highlight of my day. And like I said, the kitchen, having the restaurant with someone and supporting that person's vision, using my brand to help that vision would be great, but it would not be something I would want to do every day. So
I really like all of a sudden just got the feeling of, damn it, why does Flavor Flav have to be a rapper? Because that would be such the perfect name for a cooking show.
I'm trying to tell you, no, so maybe listen, maybe my main conversation with food, because I need that just basically
Conversations with food.
right.
Ooh.
That's what I do for, like I said, my Facebook Live, and I feel like that tells my story. I
Yeah.
want to have a conversation, and I'm looking forward to having you on the show, but having a conversation and then we cook.
Well, and I think it's about the relationship because you've touched on this, right?
Mhm.
Food is a relationship. It's a celebration. And so not only can we have these conversations around it, but we also have that saying, let's break bread together. There's a
Mhm.
reason that that exists. And it's because there is a relationship that comes out of when
Mhm.
you can share a meal with somebody. And if you can
Yeah.
share a meal with somebody, you're friends for life, right? There's this like bond that you have. And I feel like a lot of what happens in our society, especially today, is that we're so go, go, go that
Yep.
we forget that that conversation exists with the food that we're having.
Yep.
And it's easy to grab the fastest thing, the cheapest thing, so that we can get enough energy to keep going. But we've lost sight of that conversation. We've lost sight of that relationship of what that food is supposed to be bringing to us. And if we can reconnect with that, I think that's going to change our entire culture. It'll change our entire evaluation of time that we're spending around the table together, the meals that we're having together, and the value that those meals can bring to us through nourishment. You've talked a little bit about food that heals. Well, it's not the
Mhm.
fastest food. It's not going to be the cheapest food. It's going to
Yeah.
take time, right?
And even in the healing process, I have a little quote that Dr. Coben gave us when we graduated from food therapy, in my window, and I have it framed, and it says, "Food has nothing to do with the ingredients and everything to do with love."
Mm,
I think sometimes people don't realize that healing foods is not necessarily just about buying organic, right? Because I tell people, listen, you can actually create distress in your household if you decide to become a vegan, vegetarian. Everybody is just a meat eater, and I've seen people, I know a lot of people who've done that. They've created a lot of discord at the table because they're eating one thing, their family's eating something different, and either they want to insist that their family eat like them and then kind of make people feel guilty because there's a
mm,
lot of guilt and control and politics and a lot of things that people do with food.
interesting.
Or or they themselves feel guilty, and then it just becomes this back and forth discord. So to me, I always say to people, hey, if you're going to do a cleanse or detox, this is something that you do need to have a dinner and sit and communicate with your family and say, listen, I'm choosing to change my diet because of X, Y, and Z. Or as Anne-Marie Coleman hates that word, she would say live it, because the word diet means diet, right? I'm choosing to eat this way going forward, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to respect how you're eating. We're going to respect each other, and we're going to just still share love on the table. Like one of my girlfriends in New York, for instance, she's a vegetarian, but her family are meat eaters, and she cooks both dinners. And they have a good time together. It's not a contention. And I think what tends to happen a lot of times is that we stumble upon Ayurveda eating or macrobiotics or the zone diet or this, or now it's keto. And we become like, oh, I gotta lose all this weight, or I gotta do all this, and this is how I'm gonna live longer. And we don't realize that we can create discord.
Oh, yeah.
in
Yeah.
your household, you know. Then the
And
other
it's
thing,
part of the reason why we don't stick with diets either. Like
right?
diets end up being fads, just like the acai berry, like was here
Uh-huh.
one day and nobody talks about
Exactly.
it anymore, right? Like,
Exactly. Quinoa was something, kale was something,
yeah.
cauliflower is now something. I don't know what the new something is now, right? You know,
Other than keto is a big thing right now. A lot of
and
people have been talking about it. But you're right. It's a lifestyle, right? You,
exactly.
there
How do
needs
you,
to be a conversation about it. Like my husband and I went vegetarian a little over a year and a half ago almost. And he's not fully vegetarian. When we eat out, he orders meat, and that's
right?
fine. But I'm not buying
Exactly.
meat for the house, and he's fine with that.
Exactly. And like I said, you want to create harmony because food really doesn't have anything to do with the ingredients and it really does have everything to do with the relationships. And that's
Mhm.
why, you know, as much as I know people like meal prepping and they go to these companies to prep for them and you know, or people are doing it and I'm not against it if you're really busy with your life, but I say and I'm going to start to sound like Dr. Coben and all my great teachers, that you have to evaluate what wealth means to you. You know, you have to evaluate what happiness means to you, you know, from the inside out. And are you so enamored with the society's way of success, wealth, and happiness and wholeness? And that's what food therapy is. Or are you going to dig into your core and your center and evaluate yourself and your life and know what happiness is? And like I said, that's my personal journey,
Yeah.
you know, and I've been able to obtain that by consistently practicing my meditation, working on being in the now, which is not easy, you know, but it's, you know, I don't like using those words. It's doable, but it takes work, you know, and really
It
following,
takes effort. It's
right,
not something that's just gonna, okay, I've made the decision that I'm gonna live in the now.
correct, you
And
know,
so
and
now I'm doing it. Like it doesn't,
correct.
it doesn't
Correct,
work like
correct. I'll
that.
share a funny little quick, tiny little story that Dr. Colbin, two things that she taught us in food therapy. She said it was a couple who was very healthy. They were vegans. They ate very, very well. And then one day they were crossing the street together. They got hit by a bus and they died. And when they got to heaven, it was full of bagels and cream cheese and donuts and cupcakes and meat. And the husband said, if I had known this, I would have allowed myself to die sooner. You know, you know, and that's what the husband told the wife when she got to heaven. And she said, you have to stop taking yourself so seriously.
Mm,
She was like, stop using food as a weapon to look down on a person, you
mm,
know, and it kind of takes me to that scripture where it says, you know, one man's faith allows him to eat only vegetables, where another man's faith makes him eat everything. The person who eats vegetables shouldn't look down on the person who eats everything, and the person who eats everything shouldn't look down on the person who only eats vegetables.
yeah.
And I feel like there's a reason why that scripture kind of was there, you know, and even in Buddhism, they teach you about letting go of the ego, you
Mm,
know, understanding that all of this is egoic, you know, and when you get to when you restore love in food, when you bring love back in your house, to me, your kitchen will come alive.
mhm.
You know, you will make better decisions to have more water. You want to, again, the reason why fast food is so dominant is not because that we like junk food, it's because that we're drawn to it because we're moving too much and we feel like we're catching up to something. We have to catch something. We have to meet up with people and live like them. We're trying our best to live like a celebrity or this and this and that.
This actually relates to a conversation I was just having with my husband this morning. So it's very interesting. In Europe, in the UK, there was a post done recently, apparently on Quora. My husband's a big Quora person, and that
I know
Quora is
Cora.
a blog forum where
I know.
people write about all sorts of things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And in there was a question posed about this concept of work-life balance and like rushing around and not having the time or feeling pressured or stressed when it
Right,
comes to raising a family here in the US. And we have this like innate, like there's this pressure, there's this stress, there's a lot of like frustration and like tension
right.
around family life versus work life here in the US
Mhm.
that people in the UK just don't understand. Over there, everybody's excited to have a family. life is wonderful. They're excited to have food together and cook together and live together and work together and be together, and they enjoy every moment that they have. And it
Mm-hmm.
got me to thinking, it's like, yeah, we are in this, like, hustle culture is a thing that exists here in
Yeah,
the US.
it's true. It's true.
And the always needing to be connected, never
Mm-hmm.
being able to take a moment for yourself, or,
Mm-hmm.
this constant, like, fear of missing out
Mm-hmm.
is strong here in the US, but it doesn't exist in other parts of the world.
You're
They
absolutely right.
work at a much slower pace than we do. So you're right. Like, the fast food culture started here in the US, and then we shared it with other places in the world, but it's not nearly the size in other places of the world as it is here.
Correct.
And we've never really taken the time to evaluate why. What are we trying to catch? What are we trying to chase? What is it
Correct.
that we're trying to run away from, maybe? What are we running away from?
Correct. I mean, if you really sit down and think about it, everything in our country, particularly here in the US, is very much driven by celebrityism,
Mm,
for the lack of better words. Because, a lot of times people say, I used to listen to those videos, for instance, on YouTube, with different famous celebrities talking about if you want to gain this success, you got to work like a dog, wake up at 2 a.m. kind of thing. And then I realized no, because then by the time I get there, a lot of these guys, if you look at them, I mean, like I said, I'm a big documentary person and I'm a self-helpy kind of person, and if you look at a lot of these lives, some of these people are on their sixth and seventh marriage, is zero quality of life. Some of them, their mouths are full of veneers. I've seen chefs on, like I said, the docuseries Chef's Table who lost their marriage. I mean, Anthony Bourdain, I had an opportunity to do show with him, The Taste, for like a month. I hung out with him, and then him killing himself. And he was Anthony Bourdain of all people, right?
yes. That was heartbreaking. That was
Right.
heartbreaking. My family, we
Exactly.
were very sad to see that happened to him, because we
Right.
loved watching his shows. Like, we
And
were Anthony Bourdain fans.
correct. And
Yeah.
I mean, I had a chance to be up close and personal and have great conversation. He was a little bit of, like I said, it was only for 30 days, a month. And just being around him for that, 30 plus days in California, filming The Taste behind the scenes, few little times he spoke to us here and there and different things when we were all set. He had a beautiful and interesting mindset,
Mm,
but just like the other actor who used to make people laugh, that committed suicide, a
Robin
lot,
Williams.
a lot of times people don't realize that when you're running on empty, and that's what I call living on empty. And I think that in the US, we advocate and we promote living on empty. And we say, well, if you want to be successful, you have to live this way. And I'm like, well, think about it. During the times of my grandmother and the rest of the world, and we had a 30-hour work week, and that was only about 10, 20 years ago. Well, maybe when I was a little girl, so about 20 plus years ago, right? When banks actually closed at 3 and school ended at 3 and people went home, we were now being introduced to internet. Cell phones weren't there yet. We were still on payphones and beepers kind of thing, right? And we were little kids outside, running outside and playing. People had a quality of life. The cancer rate was not so high. Disease rates were not so high. Suicidal rates were not so high. And now we've come to a world, I mean, things weren't so expensive. Now we're in a world where we're constantly putting band-aids on bigger problems. You
Mm,
know, organic food is a band-aid. I mean, I tell people eat organic, but it's a band-aid because you can eat organic. I know people who eat organic all the time. Going to the gym is a band-aid. These diets are band-aids. The core of the problem is that we're not happy people.
hmm
We don't know who we are. And that's what food therapy addresses. It makes you dig to the soul of your being. And that's what got me into, like I said, the transcendental
mm.
meditation, metaphysical Christianity, digging into the heart and soul of self. Do you know your self-worth? I had to ask myself that at 41. I'm going to be 42 in about 19 days. I had to reevaluate. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you know yourself, Natasha? Or
You're
you are
absolutely gorgeous. I never would have guessed that you were
Thank
42.
you. Thank you. do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? What is your core? What are your values? Who are you? You know, and like I said, that to me, you know, like we're deculturalizing food. You know, we're going into countries. I mean, when the quinoa, let me tell you the impact of quinoa when it became a fad. So in Peru, you know, when quinoa became a fad, that was sustenance for the farmers for them to feed their families for the whole year. Not only just they sold some and they kept some for themselves to feed their family. So the government in Peru regulated the crop where the farmers were no longer allowed to keep any part of it. They were only allowed to grow it, and then once they grew it, they took all of it.
Yeah.
So in order for them to get that food, quinoa, they would have to purchase it like everybody else, right?
See, and
And
this is the same thing. I mean, this is a story that recycles over and over again. I studied Latin American history when I was in college. And from the beginning of there being a Latin America, the US has put regulations and bans to keep that part of the country
suppressed.
regulated and suppressed so that
Right.
they could instill a power over them. And
Correct.
it's been that way forever. It's been that way
Correct.
forever. And
And
it just keeps repeating. It's terrible.
correct. And so what ends up happening is that the price of quinoa skyrocketed where they could not afford it. And you actually threw Peru's economy in a place of extreme poverty. You know, I mean, we're over here fighting over the right to wear a mask or not wear a mask. But we don't realize, I mean, it's the same thing with coconuts in the Caribbean. When coconut water became a fad and coconut oil became a fad, then we started to colonize places like in Brazil and the Caribbean, and we stopped people from using the coconuts, but they grew. You know, so you think about that. You know, we have to realize that when we get enamored with these fads and it becomes a demand on the market, avocados, all kinds of things, then we create a destabilization of economies, and it not only affects the financial component of things, but it also you know, it affects families, and people don't know how to eat, where to eat. It affects environmental issues because now we're demanding that we have avocados all year when avocados are only certain times of the year.
Right.
You know, we make these ridiculous demands because of these food fads, and it creates destabilization. And we wonder why we're having forest fires, you know, storms, outrageous hurricanes. I'm like, because Mother Earth is attempting to stabilize what is being destabilized. You know.
Oh my God, Natasha, this conversation has been so deep. It's so good. Like, who knew all of these things were related to our relationship with our food?
Correct.
Oh my God.
Correct.
You're blowing my mind. I love it.
Correct. You know, and so, I mean, and then cultures are faded, and, you know, people are really starting to say, hey, there's a reason. I like I was saying to someone yesterday, the same way God created a variety of fruits and vegetables, God created a variety of people. We do not all have to be the same. We don't have to worship the same things, honor the same things. But the underlying driver is love. You know, the Bible says it's the only thing that remains, you know, and so at the end of the day, if we are motivated by love and we, you know, and I believe this world is going to get better. I am not by far the pessimistic. So even though I kind of shared that picture just now, I believe the world is getting better and is moving to more love and space. We're just going through the rebirthing and things are a little bit chaotic. But 10 years from now, we're going to look up and this is going to be a totally different world, believe it or not. You know, I don't think
I totally agree with you. I think as a society, as a holistic world society, there is an awakening. There's an awakening that's happening. There's a huge movement for meditation, for self-awareness, for self-actualization. And with that movement is going to come a whole world of people that all of a sudden are like, wait, why am I doing all of this?
Correct.
This isn't who I am.
Correct.
This isn't what
Correct.
I want.
Correct.
And it's going to revolutionize and change all of the things that we do and how we do them.
So and I believe that we're moving. I think coronavirus is the beginning of the brand new reset. You know, in Chinese mythology, this is the year of the metal rat, which comes every, like, I think they said like 80 something or something amount of years. So we are living in a golden time. I mean, listen, we've lived across about 4 different centuries, I think, or something like that. Like different changes. We went from the 80s to the 90s to the 200s. So we've spanned across different, age millenniums. We're in a time where 4 or 5 generations are living together. We have Gen X's, Gen Y's, millenniums, this, that, our baby boomers. This is a golden opportunity because all the minds and their variety is bringing something different to the table. And I am a big believer that we are in a huge reset. We just basically shut down the consistent movement. And that's what I love about COVID-19. I mean, it sounds kind of kooky, but I love the fact that people have been forced to stay home. People now are forced to deal with their children and their families. Like I watch TikTok sometimes, and this one lady said, I don't like this. The agreement was I dropped my bad children off from Monday through Friday. I only have to deal with them on the weekend. Now I got to deal with them all week. And I said, good. I'm an educator.
Good.
You have
Maybe
to
it'll
deal
teach
with
you
your
to raise better children.
correct. Correct. Like you now have to deal with your children and you have to stay home. So whether or not you believe coronavirus to be true, blah, 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 I'm not here for that. I'm here to say that, again, these are the conversations you have around food. Now you got to stay home. Now you got to get that. More people are cooking. I mean, there's so many new cooking shows come. I just saw one called Selena and the Chef, where people, you're seeing so many celebrities doing cooking shows on little cooking demos on YouTube, and they're at home cooking. More people are having babies. Like or a lot of people are divorcing and breaking up and getting out. And I'm like, yeah, and they're like, oh, child abuse has risen and more police are taking people out of the home. I mean, the Black Lives Matter movement. There's so many drives and pushes right now in this rebirthing stage. And if anyone ever had a child, they know rebirthing is a really tough process. And I tell you, hold on for the ride because we're about to be in the middle of the golden ages and we're going to see some beautiful things happening because the energy of love is going to pour in like rain, and I'm looking forward for it. I'm all for it, so.
It's totally going to happen. I just got like full body chill when you said that. That's so true. That's exactly what's going to happen because at the end of the day, only love will survive.
Correct.
And I am with you in 100% agreement that we have this beautiful opportunity to learn from each other. Every generation can learn something from the generation before them and the generation behind them if you're open and willing enough to ask the right questions and to listen.
Correct.
This has been so amazing. And do it over food because that's a great way to open up.
Exactly. Get in the kitchen and cook. I mean, if you've been one of those people who've been a workaholic and you travel for work all the time and now you're confined to the house because your job doesn't want you to leave home, I say get in the kitchen with your husband, your wife, whatever couple you've chosen to be. Who cares? Get in that kitchen with your kids and your family and cook.
Teach them how to garden. I mean, kids today need to understand that your food doesn't come from a grocery store. Correct. It comes from the earth. Teach them how to grow their food. Teach them how to raise animals and see that, that chicken that sits on your table, where does it come from? Well, there's a live chicken somewhere who's getting defeathered and its head cut off so that we can eat it. Correct. It's not going to just appear. It doesn't disappear. Yeah.
Correct. And these are the places that are open right now. Farms are open. Take a little mini farm family tour. I'm at Sagona Farm. If your kids are having a hard time learning and focusing when they're doing Zoom from home, and they miss their friends, have a little Saturday play date on Zoom where all the kids get together and bake little cookies or something or cupcakes, bond, and you're seeing more of that. And that's a beautiful thing. So I feel as though our world, like I said, we just basically reinvented how people can live life. I know so many people who are so glad that they don't have to work in the office and they get to work from home. Yeah. And I'm like, I mean, we've gotten cleaner air, believe it or not, even though everybody's having some sinuses and issues because we're not used to breathing in such clean air because the carbon monoxide rates have dropped. the world is getting better.
The
So
world gets to rest. As
yes.
much as Corona has been scary for a lot of people, has
Hmm.
been devastating financially to world markets.
Hmm.
From the economic standpoint, I'm with you. It is the reset that Mother Nature needed. It's the reset that we as the human population
Hmm.
needed so that we can reconnect,
Correct.
so that we can rediscover. And I have a feeling that when all of this goes away and people are able to go back to the offices in the way that they were before, they're not going to
Hmm.
want to. There's
Well,
going to be
I
massive
don't think
numbers
it's
of
going to
people
happen. I
who,
don't think it's going to happen. I
yeah.
honestly don't think that, because they're saying this is for the next 2 to 3 years because they have to get a vaccination. I don't think that
And
we're going back
I
to
honestly
the
don't think a vaccination is going to fix it. I mean, we're talking about a virus.
correct.
So the last time we had a vaccination for a virus, it was the flu vaccination that was developed in the 1950s.
Exactly.
Have we
And it's still
eradicated the flu yet? Is it
nope,
gone?
nope,
When you get a
nope,
flu vaccination, does it prevent you from getting the flu?
nope.
So then what
Correct.
are we talking about a vaccination for? I just feel like it's a waste of time.
I mean, you know what, we humans, again, we have the savior quest, and everybody has the answer, right? Some people say, switch the way you eat. Some people say live a better life. Some people say this. And I say it's everything.
It's all of it.
It's
It's all of
all
it.
of it because yes, you can become a better eater, but if you're a mean human being, what's the point? You need to probably pray more, meditate more, be in tune with yourself, go to therapy. I mean, there are downsides to the corona, like people dying by themselves and stuff like that. Is hard. Yes,
Heartbreaking.
it is
Absolutely
heartbreaking.
heartbreaking.
But what I will say is this: you would want that person to pass away versus to stay here and suffer. That's the first thing, and we have to have a better relationship even with death. If you've never talked to a death doula, I had one of my classmates and cohorts in food therapy. She was a death doula. She helped people transition. And when she explained death, it was one of the most beautiful things to understand. And if you don't have to meet a death doula, go watch Avatar and watch how they honored the cycle of birth and death. Just really appreciating, because nothing really dies. Everything just allows, the body leaves, but then the spirit continues to live forever, and it either gets another body or whatever you choose to believe. I don't want to impress anything on anyone, but the whole point is that it's the same thing with food. Understanding how the digestive system works. If you're stressed out, if your adrenals are in fight and flight, and your cortisol levels are up, you can't eat in harmony and peace. If you're angry or at strife, whatever, you
Mm-hmm.
know, understanding you. That's the best way for me to say this.
The biggest, most important takeaway of the day.
Yep.
Tasha, this has been absolutely fabulous. I'm noticing what time it is, and so I want to
Yes.
respect your time.
Yes.
I know our listeners want to learn from you because this has been absolutely delightful. They want to know what kinds of conversations they might be able to have over food and tune into your network. So, what's going to be the best way for them to do that? How can they connect with
Um,
you?
so they can easily go to my website. I have a free gift. So grab the free gift, the free e-cookbook on, go to my website, natashachef.com. I have a lot of classes and demonstrations over the next couple of months so that people can kind of just grab a glass of wine, watch, participate if they want to. And that's going to be my main focus. My main focus is let's have fun with food, and that's it. So natashachef.com, it has all the information there that you need to know about me, including our membership services. So thank you, Terry. This has been delightful.
This really has. All of the things that connect back to our food. Our food is our fuel, it's our life source, and it really does all come full circle. So pay attention to what you're eating, how you're eating it, and the conversations you're having around it, because
Correct.
that really can change everything for you. Natasha,
Correct.
thank you so much.
Yes. 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 And don't forget to chew your food slowly and do not eat in front of the television.
Good tips. Good tips. Until next time, everybody, I look forward to it.